Hello, welcome to today's lecture. Today we will be discussing the ovulation cycle. This presentation is presented and was created by me, Polina Kimovich. Today, our topics include the ovulation cycle, the follicular cycle, and the luteal cycle. A little bit about me is I'm a junior biology major. I'm currently pre-med at UMass Amherst. I like Pilates and vacations, and I'm bilingual. And my future aspirations include that I want to take one gap year, and then I want to attend medical school. And I'm currently interested in the dermatology field. And I'm also registered to take the MCAT in August, so I've been studying for that. Jumping into the lecture, this is the structure of the uterus. So the red highlight is the muscle wall and it is known as the myometrium. Inside the myometrium, which is noted with the gray highlights, is the endometrium. Right here are the fallopian tubes and the ovaries, which are tethered right underneath. These are going to be very important in the ovulation cycle. So the ovulation cycle on average is about 28 days, with the halfway mark being at 14 days, which marks ovulation. The first 14 days are known as the follicular phase, and the second 14 days are known as the luteal phase. Menstruation occurs during the last 5 days of the ovulation cycle, which is on a need-based system. The follicular phase is the body's way of preparing for ovulation. During this phase, the brain releases follicle-stimulating hormone, which we are going to refer to as FSH, which tells the ovaries to start growing follicles, one of which will become dominant and release estrogen. As estrogen levels rise, luteinizing hormone, which we refer to as LH, starts increasing too, helping the follicle to continue mature. Then there's a huge LH surge, which signals the follicle to release the oocyte. That's when the cycle moves on to the next phase, ovulation. After ovulation, the luteal phase kicks in where the empty follicle turns into the corpus luteum, releasing progesterone to prepare the uterus for pregnancy. If fertilization doesn't happen, then the hormone levels drop and the cycle starts over. Here in the diagram, we can see that our LH surge occurs right at the 14-day mark. So jumping a little bit more into the follicular cycle, in the follicular phase, estrogen levels go from low to high. The black center right here is called the oocyte, and this follicle will mature and eventually release the oocyte. It is going to go from the ovaries to the fallopian tubes. We are also going to be talking gonadotropes and how they impact and stimulate the ovulation cycle, since they provide the drive for the production and release of sex steroid hormone. When estrogen levels are very low, that's going to send a feedback signal to the brain. It will communicate with the neurons, which is GnRH here, that will make gonadotropin hormone releasing factors. GnRH neurons will be stimulated to release this hormone into our portal system. This happens when GnRH binds to gonadotropes via receptors, which sets off a cascade. This then will communicate with the gonadotropes in the anterior pituitary, which then release the stimulating factors, which is going to be LH and FSH. So looking over here, a female is born with a set number of agonium. Agonium becomes premortal follicles. A premortal follicle consists of the oocyte that's now surrounded by one layer of granulosa cells, which can be noted with the blue dotted perimeter. Following puberty, each cycle, a single premortal cell is selected from the pool to undergo maturation. The selected cell will have its granulosa cells go through proliferation. Theca cells are also introduced and can be seen in purple. This structure as a whole is now going to be known as the primary follicle. And this is where we begin. So this primary follicle is step one right here in the follicular phase. Taking a deeper dive into LH and FSH, follicle-stimulating hormone drives the proliferation of the granulosa layer. It will then become a secondary follicle and it becomes bigger. LH and FSH are still acting on the secondary follicle. When it binds to theca cells, it will cause a signal cascade, which will inspire the production of testosterone. This testosterone will then float over to the neighboring follicular cell. LH has a receptor on the granulosa cell. When it binds and activates the cascade, it activates aromatase, which converts testosterone into estrogen. The combination of LH and FSH on these two cell types in both the primary follicle and the secondary follicle are going to be the cause of the production of estrogen. LH and FSH also inspire the production of follicular fluid, which can be noted in the yellow highlight. This follicular fluid aids in the rupturing of the follicle at the time of ovulation, and it is why the oocyte is able to be released. One last step of maturation is antral follicle, which produces a lot of estrogen, and something called inhibin, which allows the release of only luteinizing hormone, and why the LH surge occurs. Excess LH causes antral follicle to rupture and the oocyte is released, which is now a mature haplopolar site. Looking a bit more into follicular maturation. So right after menstruation, the brain is releasing FSH and several premortal follicles start to grow. Once again, the black center is the agonium and the blue dotted line around it is the granulosa cell layer, which forms around the perimeter. So one premortal follicle is going to become dominant and proliferation will occur. where it will now become a primary follicle. In the primary follicle, there will be a thicker layer of granulosa cells and theca cells, which are seen in the purple dotted line. At this point, FSH will further inspire proliferation of that granulosa layer, and it will become a secondary follicle. The secondary follicle is surrounded by even more of this granulosa cell and still has theca cellular on the outside. Another thing that LH and FSH tend to do is inspire the production of follicular fluid, which can be seen by the yellow sac-like figure. The next phase is the antral follicle. Now that the follicle will reach full size, and it has a mechanism that makes it produce estrogen. These high levels of estrogen send signals to the brain to release luteinizing hormone. The LH surge in turn causes the follicle to rupture, releasing the oocyte into the fallopian tube to prepare it for fertilization. The leftover follicular matter in the ovary will become corpus luteum, where it will start producing progesterone as the body prepares for a possible pregnancy. Moving into the luteal phase, so we now have the excess from the follicular phase forming the corpus luteum here. The levels of progesterone look different here, as there isn't just a steady increase like what we saw with estrogen. Instead, there is a small amount produced, then a little bit more, and then the last part is need-based of how much gets produced. And this need-based system depends on if fertilization occurs. The last 5 days of the luteal phase include the menstruation phase. If the oocyte successfully goes through the fertilization process after going through the fallopian tubes and entering the uterus, it will be able to attach itself to the lining in the endometrium, and HCG is going to start being produced, which stands for human chorionic gonadotropin, will be released. So this is a hormone, and this will also cause a surge of progesterone to be released as the body is now preparing itself. In the absence of HCG, the corpus luteum will just start to make less progesterone, which affects the stability of the cells in the endometrium. Looking into the endometrium lining, so in the follicular phase, estrogen acts on the functional layer to promote proliferation of this layer, and mitosis will occur. During the luteal phase, progesterone acts on the functional layer to promote the secretory phase, basically activates what it just developed. The last part of the luteal phase includes menstruation. So there are blood vessels coming into the basal layer, and the blood vessels migrate to the functional layer cells due to angiogenesis. Right here are granular pits where nutrients are released out of. And this is driven by the additional amount of progesterone. When there is a lack of HCG factor due to lack of implants, progesterone levels drop and the cells rupture, resulting in menstruation. So breaking down these 3 steps a little bit further, so in the proliferative phase, FSH stimulates follicle growth, leading to estrogen secretion by granulosa cells, which drives the endometrium proliferation. Estrogen promotes angiogenesis, increasing blood vessel growth, particularly viral arteries. In the secretory phase, which is again progesterone driven, so after ovulation, LH stimulates the corpus luteum, which secretes progesterone. This pore will secrete nutrients such as glucose, amino acids, and fat. In menstruation, which is basically just hormone withdrawal, if fertilization does not occur, LH and FSH levels drop, leading to the corpus luteum regression and a sharp decline in progesterone and estrogen. This triggers endometrial breakdown, vasoconstriction of viral arteries, and the shedding of the functional layer, which results in menstruation. That's all for now. Thanks for watching.